because did you ever go to stand up New York, Marlon?
Yes, so I went to. I worked with a lot of those comedians.
Mm,
A lot of comedians that are known today. I didn't do. I was doing comic acting,
mm,
so I did the New York Comedy Film Festival for a couple of years
mm.
actually, and worked with Patrice O'Neill,
Oh,
worked with
really?
Tony Roberts. Oh
Like,
yeah,
did you see my face light
worked
up? You're
with
like, Patrice? What? He's the
where's
legend. He's
that?
one of the goats, man. Patrice O'Neill. Like
Yeah,
he's one of the heroes for comedy. If anybody knows, go you can find it up on YouTube where Patrice is defending comedy on Fox News. And
yes,
he was the one who put out that he was like, whether it's the worst, most offensive joke or the best joke ever, it all comes from the same place. And if comedians aren't
yes.
allowed to explore that, you end up finding it starts limiting things. And there's a lot of stand up acts that I'll say today that are very tame and very milquetoast because they don't want to take that chance because they're afraid of any backlash. And I'm like, we're comics, we're not actors. There's a difference. You know what I mean? Like you don't need an agent. You don't have to wait for somebody's approval. Just be funny and make the audience laugh. That's the only thing that matters, Which I wish actors had because I know this is just the way the business is set up. Because if comedy was the same way, if we had to go through agents and through a casting director and stuff like that, we would be exactly the same as actors. You know what I mean? Because it's a scary thing. You can't go in there and be like, "Hey, so what's your political beliefs?" And I'm like, you don't want to say that in a theater group. I know that because I've done that before, and I pissed off a lot of people who thought that somehow I was like this ultra right guy, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I expressed an opinion that wasn't the same as everybody else that worked at that particular show, and which was really I forgot about that because with comedy you absolutely can do that. Well, that doesn't always go over well, but the whole idea is that stuff is like strong opinions is kind of what makes a really really good act in the first place. You know,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I feel
yeah,
like I'm
for
getting us
for
on track here, but you worked with Patrice. I got to ask about that. I have to. My comedy friends will not be like, "Do you work with Patrice?" And you didn't ask him a follow up question, you piece of shit. I'm like, yeah, sorry. So what did you work with him on?
Um, we were doing well. I was actually a part of. He never participated, so I was doing the sketch comedy, and we weren't in the sketch comedy. So let me rephrase that. I
Mm,
knew Patrice very well, but I
okay.
actually did work with uh, Tony Robbins, Ian Edwards.
Yeah.
Dean was a part of it, but I used to go to the comedy clubs with them. We would just
Mm.
Tracy. I don't know if you remember Tracy Lauren and Alicia. Did you remember when Alicia Williams was doing stand up?
No, I didn't know about that.
Yes, she did. Her and Tracy did stand up right after Amber, and I
Wow.
would go to their sets. But I was hanging out with the comedians. Uh, uh, Patrice and I used to hang out. We would hang out at 101 Studios.
Mm.
I met him backstage at one of his shows,
Mm-hmm.
and he thought I was a comedian because I had him, David Allen Greer, and
Mm.
not Lewis Black. I forget the other comedian, but we're backstage, and I had them laughing, and he just kept swearing up and down that I was a comedian. I'm like, no, I just do comic acting.
Mm.
So we were supposed to do some skits together, but he was feeling bad. He was still dealing with the diabetes.
Mm.
Uh, but we were going to work together, and I was too sick. But he used to talk about me like a dog. Oh my, he used to just uh,
Once he starts ripping on
when
somebody, it's just kind of like, oh, dude. Once you catch his eye, from what I've heard from so many other comedians, it's like it's the funniest but the most horrible thing in the world because it's like he's just gonna rip you into an asshole.
yeah, I was limping a lot, and he would go in on me about being crippled and all of that. And I mean, he would go in, and all you could do is laugh at yourself because he was funny, and
Mm-hmm.
he had that big laugh. He's like, it looked like you might as well just crawl. I don't know, just cut that fucking leg off. He would just say shit like that all the time.
Mm.
Um, but I do believe that there were things that I said that he was able to embody and put into some of his routines.
Mm-hmm.
But he was naturally funny, and what I loved about Patrice is that he understood elements that made a joke funny, and he was bold enough to do,
Mm-hmm.
like, even before Dave Chappelle, it was Patrice
Mm.
who was that dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, he was as dangerous as George Carlin.
Oh, big time. Easily.
Yeah,
Easily.
yeah. He had a joke where he was in a room with full of Europeans,
Mm.
and he said, "Look, y'all are the worst." He said, "Y'all got kicked out your country and came here." And he would just go with a whole routine about how messed up they were, and they were like, "That's why the United States is the way that it is because England kicked y'all fuckers out." And yeah, so it was he had a he understood, and then he understood how to tell a joke on film as well,
Yeah.
and that's what made him brilliant. People like Tony Robbins. Tony is funny as shit. I
Mm.
don't care what anybody says, even when he's not. And you're right, comedians do try to make each other laugh.
Mm.
If you can make a Dave Chappelle laugh, you're approved.
Yeah.
You're approved. And I used to go to the Comedy Cellar all the time.
Mm.
All the matter of fact, shit, I've even been kicked out of Dave Chappelle shows for heckling him.
Really?
Yeah. Oh
Jesus.
hell yeah, hell yeah,
Like I don't
hell
give a
yeah,
fuck. Yeah, but oh,
yeah.
my favorite stuff with Patrice is watching episodes of Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn, and when
Yeah.
he's like ripping on Kevin Hart, because I feel like I'm like, man, I mean Kevin Hart, I mean who's better, who's funnier than Kevin Hart? I mean, it did not matter because Patrice was just ripping this kid because he was a young comic back then. He wasn't Kevin Hart back then, and I'm like, yeah, it's
He still couldn't touch him. I mean, Patrice was his mind, and this is about understanding. This is both actors and comedians need to have an understanding. And uh, he would always talk about, like, he said, "What if a woman could ejaculate an egg on a man's face? Like, I just dropped the egg on his face. Like, who thinks of that? Who thinks of said that's brilliant to me. That's brilliant.
yeah,
And he makes something that was so it was taboo.
mm-hmm.
Anything that was taboo, he put on the front line of his comedy. And I think that it just just to bring together the uh, things that are similar between actors and comedians, and where actors and comedians kind of you either know where to blend it or where to split it.
Yeah,
So you have to know genres. Like actors, you have to know the difference between commercial acting, acting for film and TV,
right,
acting for a series, acting for, and not even film and TV. I'm going to split those because if you're in a movie, the circumstances and your urgency will be more than if you're in 10 episodes.
yeah,
So you better know the difference between the acting styles. One is more of a character, the other is emotions.
mm,
As a TV, you better know how to play emotions, and your character develops outside of that,
yeah,
as opposed to developing your character to present to a film because you're only in that for 60 minutes,
right,
and you're not even in it for that long. It's just the whole entire thing, maybe 60 to 90 minutes.
right,
As a comedian, you have to know that crowd. That's why I loved about Patrice. Like he could take that routine because he understood. I'm not going to talk about black relationships and white relationships. I'm
mm,
going to talk about relationships, and that is where the universal thing is. But I'm going to add black and white in there. So just
right,
understanding who you are, what your crowd is, and what your job is. Your job. Going back a little bit, when I was in Virginia, the big thing was they were Christian comics. And I
mm,
used to tell them, I'm like, listen, you can make people laugh here, but if you step and go from Southern Virginia to DC, only 3 hours away,
mm,
you are going to bomb. I'm
yeah,
from DC. I know that y'all are not going to bring that bullshit there. They want more. So you have to work in a sense of not only expansion, but you have to make people. You have to and comedians have this as well. You have to make people see you differently.
mm,
You have to make them because you're going to come off like if I see you on stage, I'm going to expect some kind of comedy.
mm,
It's up to you to show me different.
right,
It's up to you to show me that you have a broader range.
right,
Um, I know a female comedian in Virginia. She had a bush and everything, looked like a poet.
Mm.
And she would come on stage and say, "If y'all are looking for haikus and shit like that, you motherfuckers came to the wrong spot."
Right.
And that's how she came off, just right there.
Yep.
And she broke her appearance, and she is funny. Let me tell you, she crushes a lot of people that look at her. She's prettier.
Mm.
And so she had to be a little bit more gritty to get people to take her seriously.
I would say
Um,
it's tougher for female comics, definitely for sure. There's like, oh my god, it's a double edged sword because like let's say if I have a show, I never invite my wife to any open mics because I love her. Uh, but if it's a showcase, because open mics are painful. She's like, she used to go to like maybe one a year or something, you know, and I'm like, no, you don't have to. She's like, no, I know you're funny, um, but if I'm at a showcase and a female comic comes up, I could feel the eye roll on my wife because she was like, man, I hope this isn't hacky bullshit. Because during the Me Too movement, I would say there was a lot of female comics that had very, very identical sets. I heard the same flaccid penis joke premise over and over again from different people, and it was harder to. And I think the reason is, and this isn't because there are any nefarious reasons or anything, and not because I think women can't be funny. It's not that at all. My favorite comedians that I ever first knew were like Carol Burnett, you know what I mean, and Lucille Ball, and the people that made me laugh first were all women comedians and stuff on TV, you know. But the thing is because there's so the you might have let's say 80% male comics and only 20% female comics. And so for producers, like I would like to not have the same five guys on the showcase. I need to mix this up again. I need to have a female comic. And I don't think I was ready to do any showcases at least till about 3 or 4 years in. There's girls that I know that are funny and they're just starting out and they're like, all right, we're going to give you 10 minutes. And that's, to me, I'm like, man, that's a really, really tough spot to be in. They have to work way, way harder. And that's not even including creepy producers or the other creepy comics that come up with the like, hey, I think you're really funny. You know, if you want some help, right, you know, I can offer some advice. I've been doing this for a while. Like, dude, there's so many like it's pretty weird. Like I always go back and forth with some like, oh, men are horrible. I'm like, yeah, not all men are horrible. Geesh. And then like I go to an open mic and I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Nah, you're right. We're all horrible. It's just it's there's always some guys that are gonna fuck it up. But yeah, I would say, yeah, especially for female comics. And so any girl that could stand out and have to be a little bit edgier, just be like, man, I was watching her special, Kathleen Madigan. I became a bigger fan. I always thought she was funny, but the last time I watched her special, Bothering Jesus on Netflix, uh, I'm like looking at the way that she writes, where it's like, here's the punchline. Okay, cool. Here's a tag. And then here's another stream of tags. And now we've gone to another punchline, but over the same premise. But now the premise has shifted. And it's really, really, really interesting to see how the folks create it. But it's so hard I mean, not that showbiz is fair. It isn't. But yeah, the female comics that do stand out
Of
really,
course.
really do stand out. You know, it's just, I think it's tough. It's a tougher road for them than, so yeah,
it's ownership.
yeah. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go.
Yeah.
It's ownership. So
Well,
this is what I love about being a stage actor. This is what I love. It doesn't matter how many Walter Lees there are. If I play it, that's my role.
Right.
I don't give it. I don't care that Sidney Poitier played it. I
Mm-hmm.
do, but I don't. Even I did Top Dog Underdog, and I literally went to the Joseph Papp Theater and saw um, uh, Don Cheadle and Jeffrey Wright their last performance with Top Dog Underdog.
Wow.
And I saw it and I said, I'm going to do Booth. I knew I was going to do Booth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it's my role. I know comedians, I watch them do similar jokes. It's the ones who own that joke are the ones who are known for
Yeah.
it. And so that's the problem with some comedians, they don't own it.
Mm.
You own your joke. And when you own your joke, it's different. I'm going to give a damn. If I did Me Too jokes, it's not going to be like any other jokes that's out there because two things comedians and actors better know one damn thing is for sure. In order to be great, you have to have life experience.
Yeah.
And if you don't have life experience, how the hell are you going to make somebody laugh at shit that you haven't seen?
Right.
How are you going to convince somebody that acting wise, how are you going to convince them that this character went through some shit that you have not gone through yet?
Right.
yeah. And it's important to know who you are, like you said before. If you don't know who you are, then how are you going to portray your life experience and your own little quirks
Mm-hmm.
and different things about your personality to your audience? Because you can always tell when someone's not. truly comfortable in their own body. That they lack the confidence. They're not. It's just a little off. It's a little bit awkward. But
Mhm.
when someone is completely comfortable with who they are and what they are, then that comes off at, to the audience as a great thing. And then, in the business, no matter what, women always have it the hardest.
Mhm.
We always do, no matter what, because there's always some creepy guy on some level that's starting to. So it's just all in how you handle yourself and navigate those
Oh no,
those
definitely.
things.
And I would say this to young artists and stuff, that a lot of folks are like, oh, I got to find my voice. I got to find this like that. I couldn't rush the way that I found my voice. I couldn't rush it. It had to come to me on its own, you know. And
Yes.
sometimes that might, hey, you might get lucky and you might find it really quick, or it's going to take you a couple of years until you finally find it. That's not a reason not to be working and stuff and working hard and like really really pushing yourself, but that's
Hmm.
that's something that I wish I also would have learned when I was younger, because I'm like, I'm not funny now because I know the tricky thing is when you know, like, okay, from an actor who wants to get into stand up and you know that you are an amazing, just a powerful actor, that you're gonna just work the hell out of this role and you're gonna be awesome, to go to something where suddenly you are not that is very very difficult, and you have to learn, and this is super important I think for young artists, you have to learn how to forgive yourself.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, yeah, you can hate yourself off stage. I'm like, okay, cool, sit in it, sit in it. Okay, now it's
Hmm.
time. Did you learn something? Great. Now what are you going to do differently next time? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's just kind of like there's no easy way to it. You know, it's not who you know. Don't fake it till you make it. Do the work. Listen to the Actors Endurance podcast because you're going to learn a lot of lessons from it. And they ain't even charging nothing. You can just go on there. And you know what? It's not like this podcast that went on forever. All right. There's just like, hey, we're going to give you some advice. Here's 22 minutes. Here you go. Now get to work, you know. So um, I don't know if there's anything you guys want to, is anything else other than the Actors Endurance that you'd like to plug afterwards. I'm going to put the link into the liner notes. But yeah, give you guys the last word on this. Is that a Bill O'Reilly line? I don't even like that guy. Why did I even say that? All right. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Uh,
Uh,
Plug away.
oh yeah, is it ladies first?
yeah, I would just say definitely check out our podcast. We also have merch on the site, so we're selling this for all the enduring artists.
Damn, merch, nice. I'm gonna look at that. I need some ideas on that.
Yes.
Yeah, just holler at me. Holler at me. I got you. Me and you go. We go way back. Jeez. Yeah, just holler at me. I got you, Dave.
Oh, nice, man.
And for me, oh, no problem. Thanks for having us. Let me say that first. And I do a script analysis class every Sunday, 1 to 2 Eastern Standard Time, 12 to 1 Mountain Time. So we're I figured that we would give a lot back to the actors, and it's just to give them a good idea. Even and this was set up for not only actors, but it was really for comedians too, to so that there's no misunderstanding of
Mm,
the work that you have to do. Just because you're funny doesn't mean that you can make a crowd laugh, and just because you're funny with a mic doesn't mean you're funny on film.
mm,
You know, and you may be a better dramatic actor than a comedic actor, and so with that, along with other training that is offered on the site, and we're just doing our parts as far as being able to get the message across in a real manner.
man, that's awesome. I thank you so much for you're doing God's work with that podcast, and I'm gonna share the shit out of every episode that I see. And thank you so much for being on the show, guys. I really appreciate it. Signing off for the Disjointed
Thanks for
podcast.
having us, Dave.
I'm Dave. For Chanel Williams and Marlon Hargrave. Y'all have a great week.